of the International Festival of Youth and Students. Это что?
Мы встречаемся с вами на молодежной...
Русский.
I think everyone of you.
Работа, потрясающие спикеры с нами сегодня. Мы ожидаем от вас фантастических, интересных, прорывных вопросов. И отталкиваясь от...
And our great historian Lev Gumilov mentioned about that. And why is Eurasia such a bright word? Because Eurasian movement has a bright future, and it doesn't have any alternative. Why? Because Eurasian movement is a cooperation movement, not confrontation, mutual understanding, not disputes, mutual understanding of peoples rather than chauvinism. In today's quickly changing world, it's very important, and that's why we are going to discuss these important issues of the Eurasian development. And who, as not young people, would discuss these issues? We and all of us are not only witnesses, but direct participants of this important process when Eurasian continent, the biggest continent in the world, is getting to a new geohistorical quality. And of course, this new geohistorical quality is not possible without energy, views, achievements of the young generation, without which future is not really possible. Let me greet all of our guests today. Now we are all present. Let's applaud to all of us. And today our work will be built in such a way. First part will be dedicated to general reasonings about certain issues which are of great importance for all of us who gathered in this audience. Some sketches for prospects of Eurasian continent in various spheres. And the second part is more of a practical we will have the results of our contests. We'll greet our contestants and winners. And without further ado, I invite our discussion platform will be opened by a person who actually passed the way from the very beginning till his current position, whose activity was closely related. Now we can call him a general, Alexander Vyacheslavovich Bugayev. Thank you. Let me greet all of you on the 19th Festival of Youth and Students. Everything which we observe happening around us, it's a huge event. And a great number of young people from all over the world who are in the framework of this process which we call all Eurasian process. Why is it important for us as a federal agency for youth affairs? Because we have a wide spectrum of different streams of international cooperation, and of course we conduct youth exchanges in all possible directions of geopolitical, geostrategical development in all the regions where people are welcoming us, and we do not decline anyone. But undoubtedly, Eurasian space, and I'm confident in that, is a key to have an opportunity to implement a wide range of humanitarian, youth, and social projects. And for this, we have all the conditions in place. And in the framework of Eurasia Festival, which we had in Russia last year, and this is the second time in Sochi, in the framework of the Eurasian Forum, we see this opportunity for unification of youth of the Eurasian spectrum, the Eurasian continent. A few years ago, Eurasian unification and the process, we've been talking a lot about it. And you can remember what had been said, what various structures had been created. And after that, this topic, let's say, became slightly more active. And this is closely related to geopolitical situation around our country. Gigantic changes had happened on the outer contour of our surrounding and inside the country. But anyway, I'm confident that Eurasian vector is something we are doomed to. And economical conditions, geopolitical conditions are dictating us the framework which we are developing and will be developing, and those governmental bodies who are in charge of youth politics will be, let's say, drivers for this movement and this development. And taking advantage of this opportunity, I would like to thank all of those guys who come from every country, but especially from CIS countries. Boys and girls, I'm glad to see you. You are our closest relatives here. Thank you so much. And of course, I would like to emphasize that and underline that in our activities, in our exchange programs, youth exchange programs, humanitarian projects are not closed to anyone. If anybody and any organizations, countries do not like to participate, this is their own issue, but we are anyway open. And as an example of that, I would mention that this year we finished cross-border exchanges between Russia and Germany. Many young people who had the opportunity to see how their peers live abroad. In Russia, it was about 4,000 people who came over from Germany in the framework of this process. And it witnesses that in spite of anything, no matter what political processes, this is a strength of the youth cooperation. And here, in this International Festival of Youth and Students, 188 delegations. This is 188 countries, a whole spectrum, all countries members of the United Nations. And this is in itself is a very vivid example. We had a ministerial meeting for implementation of youth policy worldwide. We actually heard that some countries would not be able to make it, but they made it. Such countries like India, China, European countries, Greece, Italy, and many others. It's in itself does not take any other comments to be made, and so there are no isolationistic processes. Youth is at the age of this collaboration. And this is very pleasant. Thank you so much one more time to all of you who are gathered here. And I believe that we will have an opportunity to answer questions. Thank you. We, of course, will have questions. As Alexander mentioned, a future belongs to youth. And it depends on their knowledge, energy, and values. But all of this is to be directed and coordinated in a proper way. And it should be some organizing subjects. And one of these is an International Youth Center, which history comes back to 1960s. And so we can celebrate the jubilee of Youth Center. So the next speaker of our meeting is the director of Youth International Center and Eurasian Forum, Mr. Shevtsov. Alexei, you get the floor. Of course, we will take your idea about our jubilee into account. Dear friends, why do I say friends? Because I see many faces I already know. I've seen them in Orenburg, and I see them in different events where we discuss international and bilateral issues. Thank you so much. You found time to come today. And today we are going to discuss the necessity of a constant work in the framework of our Eurasian space and work of our forum. Last year, on behalf of our president of the Russian Federation, due to the mutual efforts of our colleagues from Orenburg region, our colleagues from GIMO, we created the first platform, Eurasia. There were many issues discussed, and in the framework of the resolution which we made as a result of that, we promised that next time when we get together, we'll read it through again and see what is being completed and what is still pending. And this year, our platform, Eurasia Forum, is in the framework of the International Forum of Youth and Students. And this is a great honor. It shows the demand and the necessity of such a format of our mutual cooperation. And of course, we would like to hear from you, your proposals on our joint work. Today, you were given some surveys, and we would like to get some feedback from you and from the standpoint of our preparation for the next event. Our forum, not so globally, but as festival proper, it takes the initiative, and we would like to make it a traditional event, annual event. And we have a confirmation from our esteemed colleagues from Orenburg region that it will be possible next year in September, from the 4th to the 10th of September next year, we will get another meeting. And this is very good. And due to your proposals, which we are collecting right now, after the forum was conducted last year, during the whole year, we have been receiving your proposals, your questions. What tasks do we have? And it's very important to us that our Eurasian Forum would become a top of an iceberg, and it would be a beautiful platform where people are coming to work on those issues which had already been taken care of at the level of regional organizations in the framework of youth tasks which exist currently. I would give you an example. A few days ago, I was on a summit, CIS countries in Sevastopol, and one of the country's representatives asked a question regarding the preparation for next year meeting. We have the CIS, then the customs union, and we have such a point of view that the customs union is such a link which can further bring the Commonwealth of Independent States to the second place. And we asked, you have such an idea, you have such a concern. Let us together think about it. What can we do to avoid such a situation when the Commonwealth of Independent States will move to the second place and further. And each year we have many events, joint events, not only the youth level, but infrastructure and economics, with economics topics. We need to think all together how can we do it to make it interesting. There are many.
And this is not only the legacy of the Soviet Union, and this is the different opinion Eurasian area. We'd like to hear the feedback from many people coming to our forum, representing not themselves, but the groups of youth who in their countries worked out various issues, projects, and brought them for discussion at the forum. Last year, it was very important that due to support of Gorchakov Foundation, we provided financial support to some members, and I will touch on that in the second part of this meeting. So once again, I would like to extend my thank you to you for participation and wish you all the luck. So I think that in the next section, we will be speaking about specific issues which are high on agenda today. Thank you. Thank you, Alexei. And our next speaker is the political figure who is equipped with analytic mind, knowledge. He's being afraid in the West, and it is not by chance he's takes number one in the sanction list accepted by U.S., Canada, and European Union. Look, is it easy to come to the North Pole or to Antarctica? At the same time, this is the person who is fully compliant with the motto of our forum. The floor goes to the chairman of the committee of the parliament and the head of the Leonid Slutsky. Good afternoon. I'm happy to be here in Sochi at the Festival of Youth and Students. Perfect site, at the site called the Eurasia. Maybe I will slightly disagree with Alexander Bugayev. I would like to extend my greetings to everybody, especially to those who came from far away, and the longer it took you to get here, the more important it is for us that we are working together. We're on the same time, on the same page, and it's closer to come from CIS countries to Sochi. CIS countries are closer to us due to integration process and post-Soviet space. This is 1/6 area of the Earth. At the same time, I would like to greet those who came here from other continents, from outside of Eurasian continent. As cementing foundation is the Russian language which we speak and which we think. And at the between in 90s and 80s in Russian was spoken by 350 million. Now it's spoken about 270 million, and it just 20 years, shaved off 20 million speakers, and Russian is getting distinct on the planet. And unfortunately, this can be referred to by a language from black holes, from astronomy. This is quite an unpleasant word, collapse. But let's have a look at how many Russian schools are open and closed. And as the biggest diaspora, when you came to United States in big cities, the young people in their families. So when we visit these families whom we know from the Soviet times, they speak Russian mediocre because they don't have to send their children to, there are no Russian schools, and they associate themselves with the Saxonian world. And this is very sad because the Russian world should be strong, and we are shaping this world today. This is the responsibility of our generation. I'm slightly older than you, you're younger. But if you allow, I will just unite ourselves together as association with the Russian world and the Russian association in the 21st century. And here we see people who belong to Eurasian project and the people who'd like to get involved in the Russian. And I would like to say that this is a challenge for us. Lyubov Glebova, when she was the head of Россотрудничества in executive bodies of the Russian Federation, she did a great job if compared to her predecessors in the area of developing Russian language, opening Russian schools, meeting the goal that was formulated by President Putin back in 2010, who said that we should get the stronghold of in our presence in Russia, in the world, and we should speak Russian in the historical areas where it has been spoken. But so far, this issue is resolved not on a positive way. We endorsed by all political parties declaration on measures to develop Russian language within the context of developing Eurasian Union, economic union. The economic union has been established. Now the issue of developing the Russian culture and language are of highest importance, and we're counting on you as the youth cooperation. Well, interparliament cooperation is a good thing, and this is what we are involved in various sites. But youth, this is you and those who come after us. And today, to set up interaction between you and representatives of other countries, to teach them in the universities at the territory of Russia and countries members of Eurasian Union in university, which we're setting up at the site of the Moscow State University, shaping up through that political elites in the countries which understand Russian, which are oriented on our countries, on Eurasian Economic Union as a very important site and landmark that would shape up the politics of Eurasia. This is not easy, but very noble challenge. So, speaking about Eurasia, maybe some of you know who Mackinder is. He is the founder of the contemporary Eurasian movement. At the beginning of the 20th century, he was telling that there's a heartland that exists, and whoever owns heartland, he owns the international island and world. And the heartland is the Eastern Europe and Russia. Mackinder substantiated it in his work. About 80 years after him, in 1994, in the Moscow State University, the founder of the contemporary Eurasian Union, Mr. Nazarbayev, substantiated the idea of setting up Eurasian Union, which would ensure the interflow of capital, labor between the countries participating in this integrating union. Since then, we came a long way. Let's project our activity on the European Union. In 1991, he was dubbed as a crazy Frenchman, was speaking about setting up the European Union. And it was just a declaration. The first bricks were set into the foundation of the European Union in 1993, where the common market started to be shaping up, and Eurasian Council. This is a unified space, economic space. It was set up in 2012, and the treaty was executed, and it was enacted in 2015. So today, between us, there are tens of infrastructure projects that are making not only the officials, but also the citizens, just all small businessmen. They are setting up very good ties, inter-business ties. They develop the common market for the countries participating in Eurasian market. Today, we have 5 countries. Belarus, Kazakhstan, Russia were the first. Armenia and Kyrgyzstan joined. And Armenia is unique because Armenia doesn't have common border. Eurasian Committee is working. Kristenko was heading it. Mr. Kristenko is very important for the post-Soviet era. The ex-prime minister of Armenia, Tigran Sarkisyan, is heading this committee, and the solutions, the issues are big in numbers, and we are aiming at the strategic factor integration project. This is not the only project. There is Shanghai Organization of Cooperation. There's a economic Silk Belt organization. But even speaking about BRICS, which unites 2 biggest countries of Eurasian, India and China, I should say that the BRICS so far hasn't been sufficiently institutionalized. We have the contour line of this project, the integration. There's education integration in universities being set up, but the integration project is underway, which is a project for all citizens of the space, uniting everybody. This is Eurasian project. In 2011, in October 2011, Izvestia newspaper published an article written by Putin, Lukashenko, and Nazarbayev. I wish you to read this article. The article of Nazarbayev, which is dubbed Eurasian Union from idea to history of future, and the history of the future is being shaped up by all of us. And Nursultan Nazarbayev was speaking about that in the near future, the voices of our parliaments will be sounding from the assembly, which would be above the countries, uniting the space of our countries. So as we had been planning that in St. Petersburg, the parliament will be working there, and jointly with the CIS, we would get the fully shaped up parliament, which will be responsible for constituting entities inside the Eurasian space, drawing the parallel with European Parliament. So far, we decided to take time out. So we decided to go ahead with Eurasian integration. And in 2015, materials, the ideas about Parliament were deleted, but this is the thing of the future. And as Nursultan Nazarbayev said, do we have representatives from Kazakhstan? Yes, we have. And I think that Mr. Nazarbayev was quite wise to promote this, backbone integration. We're counting on you because you youth are uniting between each other. You speak the same language. You are getting education in universities both of Russia and in Kazakhstan, such as Eurasian University, named after Gumilov, and many other universities at Eurasian space. First of all, we have to develop students and teach them promoting ideas of Eurasian concept and Eurasian all over the world. And of course, friends and colleagues, rather, and if you allow me to address you like this is highly important for us to set foundation of Eurasian space, assure the free movement of goods and cargo, and for that we have to have highly educated young people which are following the ideas of contemporary Eurasian theory. And thank for Alexei Luptsov and many others who formulated this idea that the Eurasian Forum in the nearest future will unite thousands of young people, both at the space of Eurasian Economic Union and outside it, which will help set up the landmark project that would unite the countries of Eurasian continent and will set up the absolutely new economic architecture of the future for you, for our country, for your countries, for peoples, and thank you for interest to Eurasian economic project, and I'm resolute that we will do many good things together, and the future lies with use of the Eurasia. Thank you. Well, I had been saying that this is just back in 18th century, Clausewitz said that if the physical world follows the motion laws, spiritual world is following the interests. Interests are the engine behind development. So today, dealing with economic science or art cannot be just productive without interest. And you can bump into complications when you have to wake up the interest of among youth to channelize it. And I can say that the next speaker never had issues with channeling energy, understanding the interest of the youth, because the the life of the person developed in the youth, and she was feeling youth because she started her political activity as a secretary of the Komsomol organization in Pedagogical Institute. Now she is the chairwoman of the, and she is a deputy chairwoman of the Culture and Education Committee. And this assignment is not by chance. She has a PhD, doctoral in pedagogics, and for many years she was doing the duties, and she was in the Ministry of Education. So the floor goes to you. After Mr. Slutsky address, I feel myself a bit uneasy because I was planning to discuss some humanitarian issues, and I have a chance after your recommendation that after your introduction. So thank you very much for these warm words, as you've introduced me in this as such. And you just introducing me said that I understand the audience, and I sincerely believe that this is the most important audience towards which all activities at the political, legislative level or social is aimed at. And this is not because I'm representing various movements, but because during various phases of my life, when I was addressing various topics, I understood that the engine behind each project lies with the people who see some potential of growth, or social potential, or personal potential. And I think this is dubbed interest, which you referred to. And this is the most interesting thing that exists with our youth. They're interested in life. And for any country, it's important to set up conditions under which this potential can be implemented, and the youth is given the chance to move on and develop the country where they were born. And I would like to point out that now we are witnesses of developing the new tradition. And developed tradition can be made by anybody, but just set up a tradition. This is the thing that is quite challenging. Last year we set it up back in Orenburg. I was happy to take part in that, and those requirements that we put forward to the festival of youth and students, which we streamlined with organization on youth, and I'm taking part in this committee and organizing committee. Many things that we discussed in Orenburg last year were taken as a basis for this work.
And now this is the second time, and whereas the second time it's the beginning of the tradition. So we are putting a cornerstone for a new tradition which will be developing and continue. The second thing I would like to mention is that around the topic of Eurasianism, I would like to add to Mr. Slutsky's analysis towards Eurasian economic trend. We all realize that humanitarian, educational trends, social relationships, we actually have such an attitude of cautiousness. But life has shown that it is not really possible to promote your economical interest in the territory of our country if this economical interest is not supported in terms of humanitarian issues. It means that if any country is doing something on the territory of another country, these things are to be acceptable. And it is being formed only by humanitarian means, communication, raising the interest, ties between people, relations. This is like, for example, is in a couple. For example, I will tell you how good I am, and you will love me for it. So this is impossible to get this development without the humanitarian component. And this is a fact which we, all of us, are to promote further together. The next key phrase, key words in our statement is education. Why? Not because of I belong to educational sphere. It's not a profession, it's life. And I'd like to say that education is acknowledged by everyone. Opponents, positionists, liberals, whoever they are. they all admit that this is a subject the globality of which is not questioned. We can doubt and we can discuss about different approaches, but the globality of education is doubted by no one. So this topic of educational importance, it's on demand. It is of high demand from the point of view of the development of interpersonal relationships. And just a few days ago, in our chamber in the Russian Federation, Mr. Collins visited us, and he is the one who came over with a group of his colleagues, and they mentioned that they were going to come back to our experiences of international student exchange. And Mr. Collins said it is noticed by a long period of time that under conditions of the lowest points in official relations, economic, political, military relationships with people, as a rule, are getting much more in demand. So the relationship between people is really something people need on the everyday basis. Communication, children, culture, education, which we're interested in on an everyday basis. So I am confident, and I would say that we, with you, in the framework of solving the educational tasks, are at the edge of the development of the world space, at the edge. And during this discussion, we have, in the framework of this forum, will let us move on and let us create further conditions for promoting this in the future. Leonid, I refer to you, to what you had said. So, yes, the development of international space, educational policy. So, what about Leonid had noted out a very important point. Together with State Duma, we introduced several important points, and I went to Council of Federation not by chance. There is something very important happening in people's relations, direct communications and ties, which are not regulated on the level of governments and executive governmental bodies. There are many conditions between the regions, between cities, and the state is to organize, to support. We're not building it. We do not send someone to the bright future. It happens on its own, but if it is supported by state. And in the Chamber of Regions of our federation, there are sister cities, there are ties between regions and countries, and here it lies the perspective for the development of people's relationships. Orenburg, next time when we will organize next forum, we will show how the polylinguals approach in the children's camp. Well, we had such a camp in Indonesia. There were many children from countries where there were other languages. and they understood each other in such a way that we, who know the languages of each other, do not understand each other. So I believe that we will be able to create interregional ties. We will promote these issues and these opportunities by our efforts, together with State Duma, create the conditions for the development of these ties. And I'm absolutely confident that only then, only in this case, when we are heard, there is a dialogue, there is mutual understanding, and our politicians may be able to solve those issues which seemed impossible, and it is in your hands. Thank you. It's brilliant. We just want to plug in and go with you. And due to the information of communication, you learn the world and are becoming able to create. Thank you so much, Lubov. And our next speaker is in my school children young age. As I know, President of the Russian Federation the person who can stand for himself, who knows very well the norms of our legislation. This is a leader of a non-governmental organization for Eurasian cooperation, Ruslan Makhmutov. Thank you for your introduction. The Eurasian idea was not, I was promoting for about 5 years, and now I'm involved in youth politics, and I had the Росстуденчество organization, and I'm an expert in two dimensions: education and youth politics. So I'd like to continue our colleagues' presentations. So this is this stream which is very important, and if we're talking about the consistency of this process, we cannot escape the humanitarian component of it. As an example, we take Ukraine, with which we had very close ties, economic, and now just many ties like that are cancelled and stopped and ruined. And it is very important to keep them preserved, and the interest our youth have towards this project. It shows the, we can see it as an indicator that we have no spare places, spare seats in this audience, and how our youth from Eurasian Union, who came from these countries, raise your hands, please. This is a good indicator of the successful character of this forum, because youth far away from these countries are interested in this project, and they see their personal trajectory of the development in the framework of their country participants in such forums. And it's a very important component than our title, I am Eurasia. Each one of us during their lives try to act in different roles, son, father, or leader, but at the same time, we try to compare ourselves with some group or education organization with our country. But today, for youth, it's very important to understand not only that heritage which post-Soviet heritage and mutual value paradigms, which gave us probably immortal memory of the history of our relationships. And our youth should understand the practical value of this process and how can they make a contribution to Eurasian idea, Eurasian Union, and get in turn some career dividends or personal dividends. And in this sense, it is probably important to note that we are forming Eurasian code with which our youth will be developing, with which we will be developing in the years to come. And those who are involved in humanitarian process, social cultural integration, which is so necessary to our countries to promote in the world's architecture and becoming a center of the power, not to be lost in this world. We have to understand our exact location and value matrix which had been inherited from our parents for our mutual cooperation. And I will briefly tell you about our important projects which are related to my activity in Eurasian cooperation. I have two small presentations, if you allow me.
Я сегодня вкратце расскажу.
I'll try to briefly introduce the results of our research. We came to it, and its concept was that humanitarian cooperation currently do not have some indicators due to which we could measure what is humanitarian cooperation, what is socio-cultural gravity between nations, and what was the experts' attitude, how our society refers to those processes where there are some mutual points of mutual interest. And economic cooperation is being measured by turnover, economic criteria, and indicators, but humanitarian cooperation is out of this sphere. So we took representatives of non-commercial organizations of the countries, members of governmental structures, and tried to figure out those indicators which we would implement while measuring this cooperation and integral participants of these countries in the integration education. So we have conducted this research in 10 post-Soviet countries, and we reviewed about 100 experts, leaders of non-commercial organizations or social organizations, unifications. We have suggested to develop 150 indicators to define the most important of them, to make them measurable, and defining certain parameters which we can actually base our research on. So we have chosen 20 indicators which will be able to create the index of inter-pair communication between two countries. These are aspects which we grouped, key aspects of the assessment, This is the first level, and second level, more detailed, is parameters. Yeah, I'll try to be brief. Maybe if someone of you are interested, I would tell you later in detail. So these indicators, for example, education, science, there are three indicators. International projects, together with other countries, grants given, how non-governmental organizations can get financial support in other countries for their activities, and joint publications number with authors from other countries, participants in monitoring like that. So we've got about 80 indicators. We actually went further up to 150. So our expert community decided to choose some of them in particular, and we'll show you our preliminary results because we just finished this research, which was about 1.5 year long. We conducted online reviews, and these are three criteria on the basis of which importance, validity, and experts' opinion which we relied on.
This is the example of preliminary data and analysis, and we came to a conclusion that education and science experts singled out two major indicators: the number of international projects and research with other countries and regions carried out by universities, and the number of international students coming to the country and coming out of the country. So the international matrix is the main indicator that shows to what degree the situation is good or bad, as this is the potential of future development of the cooperation that's underway. Well, those who are interested, you can get access to this presentation. And the second project which we implemented deals with Eurasian Civil Alliance. Today, we understand that at the age of information, where 80% of information is obtained from internet, the issue of communication among experts and young experts is important because they cannot take part due to the distance issue, visit various sites. So we developed sites and instruments whereby experts can horizontally interact with each other. So this is the platform that we've developed, ega.su, and the main instruments is the configurator of events, the calendar, crowdsourcing platform, sociological center, online library, and index aggregator to be updated online. And I think these two projects will expand horizons of understanding among youth that the region of self implementation and just expanding the potential will be provided through instruments which allow development throughout the whole Eurasian Union. And we addressed the experts to consider the future development of mechanism of social cultural integration, because today the Eurasian education deals with shaping up the Eurasian identity, that we all are Eurasians, and those who will be developing this concept will be doing pioneering steps, and we ask them to do that. Thank you very much. We just moved from global concepts to very specific issues, although I think that the last idea thrown by Ruslan will be arguing, because associating yourself with the Eurasian identity is a tricky thing. But the main thing is that if we're speaking about the new geopolitical shade of Eurasia, we cannot stay away from developing it without involving in this process youth. And I think we're coming to the most important part of our meeting, to questions and answers. Friends, colleagues, feel free to ask. We have volunteers that will give you the microphone. They are spread out over the hall. And we'll give microphone to the young man in the blue jacket, and then we'll move around the areas and sectors. And introduce yourself and ask whom you're asking the question. Good afternoon. My name is Arseny. I am a social worker in Czechia, and for 12 years I'm involved in the uniting Russian-speaking youth. And quite often I'm seeing the issue of interacting with the government offices. After visiting offices, after doing much legwork, I came to conclusion that it's much easier to invest into development of Russian culture by yourself, because you just the officials, bureaucrats are saying just develop a document, have it signed. So my question to Leonid. You were saying about development of Russian culture and Russian language. I was developing various events, cultural events in Prague, and unfortunately we didn't get the financial support. The German League of Sweepstake and Show died because of the same reason. And the question is, when the government comes from words to deeds, from saying just, the Russian culture is important, to specific steps. And the next question, Lyubov, the last Eurasian forum, we asked you, and we didn't hear a specific answer because you were dodging the answers. So I will repeat my questions. How we can develop Russian education, because living abroad, I see many things and see how Russian culture is degrading, and how a teacher or PhD student can live for 7,000 rubles. Well, I understand what you're asking for. Well, thank you for question. My name's Arseny from Prague. Arseny, thank you very much. First of all, let's be frank. Lyubov or any other, or myself, we can give you promises. Arseny, you're just brave boy. We have to develop the Russian schools in the Czech Republic. We were recalling when this show was discontinued in Russia. And Mr. Maslikov, who's the head of the project, showed that this happened due to political reasons. And any project requires funding, and the funds should be spent on schools. So if this show just unites several scores of people, broken down into teams, and the history, the legacy, we have some pictures made and video recorded. This is important, but the sponsor should be providing the money. And as a Russian, the next forum, you will be saying just whether you were funded or not. But this is exciting and interesting thing. I took part in the show myself, but this is a private initiative. Nevertheless, we have to sweep the Russian world or in different countries through projects coming to families where people are willing to teach children Russian and staying in a part of Russian world due to you and myself. Maybe you learned Russian before you're leaving, immigrated from Russia, and for the children who are born abroad, this is a big issue to get an education in Russian, to become part of Russian world and part of the Eurasian project. So this is the strategic vision for us ourselves, and this should be funded not only through private funds. So not only the government should be provided money for the cultural projects, first of all, through the Agency of Cooperation. Let's have a look what we are having in the countries of the West Europe Alliance, British Council in Goethe Institute in Germany, Cervantes Institute in Spain, and Confucius Institute in China. Big structures supporting the countrymen, schools, education on mother tongue in any country in the world. We in our great Russia, 20 years after incorporation of Russia as a new democracy and country, and having a big development in the economy, we allocating to develop that just meager funds. And I'm openly saying that youth should understand what is the decelerating mechanism and the power of this project on Eurasian space. And Lubov and Mr. Kosachev, who was heading the Rosotrudnичество before Lubov, myself, my colleagues, friends, wherever we work, and there are many of us, and we are just sending the message to the leaders of the country, and we are successful, and the programs to support Russian world are being funded, and these funds are much higher than those that had been historically provided. On top of that, we have the issue of education, and I already touched on that during my presentation in universities to teach students from other countries. It's not compared to what we had in the Soviet Union. Broadcasting. We are surprised why issues of 2008 were put from upside down, just showing Russia as aggressor. And in Valdai, Mr. Putin was saying, and by the way, Valdai Club finished yesterday here uphill. So, or just it's ending today. So I'm coming to Beijing, and Mr. Putin was flipping channels, and all of them show that the Russia is aggressor. But this is not fair. And why this happened? Why this was possible in 1999? In 1989, the scope of broadcasting was hundreds of times higher than today. We're not heard. So the Munich speech of Putin are being distorted. The Crimea events are distorted. And before we brought our ideas and the visit, made feasible the visit of parliamentaries from France to Crimea, everybody all over the world thought that merging Crimea with Russia was made against the will of people living in Crimea. So just, this practice of putting things upside down is not acceptable. So we have to develop powerful projects. As for the Prague, well, we don't have a discussion, so we progress to the questions and answers session. Give, please, the mic to another. Well, maybe I won't look like flexible and fluffy as the quality of questions is shaping up the quality of answers. So if you ask me this question, you got the answer like the one that you have. Yeah, so pay attention to the questions. So I avoid the having discussion, not to spend much time on that. Second point, mechanics of implementing initiatives. So why do you feel that the only mechanism of implementing anything deals with action against government funds? Who said you that? Then estimate, and we started very good discussion, which will continue in the second part. Although I'm not quite supportive, but humanitarian dimension doesn't have matrix. So from the standpoint of the potential, whether you are loved or not being loved, just and the one kiss is just a kiss. So from the standpoint of launching a discussion dealing with the launching action, this is a very interesting topic to start with. So the first mechanism of evaluation deals with the fact that if an idea is good, attractive, if it has a real consumer, and it occurred not in a single mind or two minds, which this idea seems to be attractive, this idea will be rooted and will be implemented. Whether it'll be sponsorship money or this is a social activity, the thing is that if this show was not supported in Prague, this implies that this show is not needed in Prague. This means that the people who are living in Prague today, they find other means of communication which are more attractive for them. This is not pleasant to hear, but this is the fact. And we have to understand that if this idea or initiative occurred in my mind, I shouldn't take grudge that the government didn't fund my idea. And thank you. This is not a discussion. Okay, enough is enough. Thank you, Lubov. And can we expand on that? If we are speaking about money, in application to any project, I recall how scientists like Lomonosov ending up with our developers of spaceships were developing fantastic products without approaching any funds. So if you if you have enough knowledge, then you'll manage yourself. Many of you turn the world upside down. You start with money first, and then you'll promise making a discovery, whereas this is absolutely wrong approach. We are changing locations, so please give a mic to a yellow sweater young man.
Okay, with a notebook or a telephone, unfortunately I don't see very well here. Hello, my name is Sergei, Luganska Republic. And I have the following question. In Lugansk National University, named after Dal, we have developed a system to work with the youth and children, which works in the framework of the free time, uniting kids and parents. It actually works for about a few years and had proven being efficient. What was your question, actually? Okay, my question is there any possibility to support such a project, this activity in our Lugansk People's Republic? It's probably mostly addressed to Leonid and Vyacheslav. Are there grants like that to support? Yeah, actually, as far as the question is related to our organization, if we are talking about grant support of certain projects, of course we support with a grant, but we need to understand that it's only possible in one way. It is aimed at citizens of the Russian Federation. Probably we are organization who gives grants to the ages between 14 and 30 years old, and I see it not as much as grants, talking about not a legal form. It's like a premium to be to have them accountable for it, to make it possible to implement their project into life. If we're talking about intergovernmental relationships, of course, humanitarian funds are more appropriate bodies for this purpose due to their legal status. We suggest to support such initiatives like this. Non-commercial organizations, we actually have again, for non-profit organizations, all Russian and inter-regional organizations registered in the Russian Federation. There is a register of state support where non-commercial organizations can get into and pretend for support from the government. These are initiatives we can support. How it is implemented technically. For a few years, we have been practicing such a technology as a project conveyor in the framework of our forums, federal and district forums, which are being conducted on the whole territory of Russia. There are online contests, internet contests in the framework of youth projects forum, and you can apply and get this support in remote mode. You can get acquainted with these mechanisms on our website, and you will know how we support certain projects. Internet today is a great force, and we can find a lot visiting websites of those organizations who offer grants, foundation named after Gorchakov. In the framework of our forum, we've got an initiatives which can be implemented in a different way. For example, Moscow Pedagogical State University, there is a great deal of practice of the experience. You can do it. I can offer to jointly look at this previous experience in Moscow Pedagogical Institute, where the partner can be Lugansk University from the standpoint of practical activities, research, and so on and so forth, and they would make their contribution into youth projects. I would like to participate and help you in this. Thank you, Elena. Unfortunately, we have very short time before we complete our meeting. Of course, we can argue about Club of Humor in Prague. If there is no state support, we can lose Russian language. There are about 80 million people which we have already lost. All these requests and recommendations on support, please let us concentrate them on some informational resource of this festival or Eurasia Forum, because it is structured very well, and then we will analyze it during 1 month or month and a half, and we'll do our best if we can support or at least help you, recommend you. As for Eurasia, thank you. Sorry. Our meeting is actually designed to accumulate common interests. I would like to remind just one point, dear colleagues, you have surveys and who will not be able to ask a question, because after you write your questions, please mention your contacts and we will try to get in contact with you and solve your questions. Please be brief. Ruslan Pankratov, Riga, Latvia, Return Our Names organization. My question is to Leonid. During these 3 to 4 weeks, Mr. Putin signalized to Baltic countries, especially Latvia. We can say it's like a black note because of those Russians who do not have right to implement Russian language in Latvia. Does it mean the shift in paradigm shift and coming back to Primakov's principles? Because if we don't have if we don't have preferences to Russian citizens, I mean Russian-speaking citizens of Latvia, you will lose economic preferences. We don't have any movement in the paradigm shift. Vysotsky some days said it's easy to die, but it's hard to change this life. There are our people there in Ventspils, Daugavpils. 97% of population are Russian-speaking, and who will be learn or teach 60% of the educational program in Latvian, because these people do not know Latvian, but they speak Russian. There is no non-citizen concept in the international law, and I would say that it's a blatant approach that it is impossible to call villages, towns, streets with Russian names. And this situation is to be resolved somehow. Russian political forces and European political forces say that in Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, they have such a situation when human rights are being broken. Our support is in the fact that we are having communication, and we have certain steps scheduled. We can't have other paradigm rather than having support to our people, Russian-speaking people, where their rights are forfeited, or we have to create a situation to remove this law on limiting Russian-speaking citizens and calling them non-citizens. And of course, I would like to thank Ruslan and dozens of non-governmental organizations from Latvia, Estonia, and other countries of the region for this support of Russian language and our Russian-speaking people. Let's applaud. And okay, why are only men asking questions? Let us change to women, please. Young lady here. Hello, my name is Ksenia. Zolushka Charity Fund. With our colleagues, we are implementing a few projects related to culture, history of our country, Sini Platochik of Victory, some other film projects. These projects are of interest in terms of learning our history, and we would like that people worldwide would know about the deeds of our women during the World War II, and we would like to invite Leonid to participate in this work, to develop it on an international scale. And of course, we cannot refuse such Cinderellas. We have translated our materials to several languages. So thank you. Thank you so much. And we are moving to this row, the second row, the man in a blue sweater, raising his hand for a pretty long time. Good evening, Gregory, Israel. We are actively participating in all events here, enjoying Sochi. This is an economic question to Mr. Slutsky, professional economic question. I'm involved in bank sector, and we have millions of Russian population. We support cultural, political, and economic ties with Russia. And periodically, there are certain questions raised to open bank accounts in rubles in Israel. And there is a question: is there any experience like that, and whom we to address with about this pension for our Russian-speaking citizens? And there are other questions. First of all, let us support our Zolushkas. We'll support this project. And as for Grigory's question, I remembered Nikolai Nekrasov, and if those people who left our country. What? Sorry. Yeah, it's a poem by Nekrasov. Grigory, thank you. I would like to thank you for as a young politician, and I think he will have this poem in his heart, which I've just recited. And I would like to thank Konstantin, Knesset deputy, and other friends, common friends with Grigory. The thing that you do in this relevant movement, it's very important. Israel is one of the biggest countries in terms of having Russian-speaking population. These are very important projects which you try to implement. And the word support and to support, of course, we will participate. We have a certain paradigm here which is not going to be changed, and in nearest months we will develop a roadmap which will help us, together with Россотрудничество, and move significantly forward in this direction. Grigory, please bring greetings to those who follow our festival in Israel. Thank you. Thank you very much. Our time is getting to the end of our meeting, and probably we'll have the last question, and then we'll have the other part where we can continue our communication. Okay, this man from the second row. Hello, my question is, will you please stand up so that we might see you? Alexander Din Lazarev, Finland. I would like to ask Leonid and Lubov. What you just said about the necessity in educational centers, innovational centers in Eurasian space. And we have been working on creating a foundation jointly with Finland, China, and Russia, which would be willing to cooperate with you in this direction and support, if you support it at a state level, on creating and development of investment to education in Eurasian territory for creating such funds. Yes, of course. Yeah, we do not actually request your support. We suggest support that we would support you. It's a proposal, not a question. Okay, guys. Thank you, our beautiful moderator. I understand that we are short in time, but we are offered a support for probable joining of Finland to Eurasian Union. Why don't we use this opportunity? Okay, and another issue, which is actually a question, I'm working in a youth movement for about 15 years, and we've got great experience in conducting different youth events in Europe, jointly with Russian youth organizations, and we would like to offer to have joint Eurasian festivals like that on the European platforms. I think Russian youth would be interested in accepting our experience. Yeah, this is mostly to my address. We will have a certain special committee. After our meeting, we can talk with you and think how we can arrange it. Thank you. We'll participate with great pleasure. Unfortunately, dear colleagues, we have to take a break. And whoever is interested in personal communication with our outstanding people of Russian Federation, please come over personally. Just one question, sorry. One question. Please let us organize a joint photo, first of all, and 7